I talk to the people here.
Yeah, yeah. So, and how does that work? Like, especially at this time, I'm sure it is perhaps the same ritual for you. Not much have perhaps changed for you in that case.
We were virtual to begin with, so we had office space before, which we just didn't have sufficient number of people in any location for us to justify it. So we actually had switched to a full virtual model before the crisis hit. So for us on a day-to-day work day basis,
Mhm.
not much changed. Obviously, our private lives completely were rearranged. But work-wise, we were early on trying to figure out how to keep people engaged, how to keep a meeting rhythm that didn't annoy people, but still keep communication channels going. Our tools were already doing the things that we were doing remotely. So, most of us being coders, it wasn't a big deal, to like, okay, pull somebody's code, comment on it, make the deployments happen, jump on a quick conference. All these things were already happening for us. I think the rest of the working world discovered in a shocking way that work is possible when you're not in a given location. Um,
Yeah.
there are other facets, of course. I think where we struggle and everybody else is struggling is basically how do you keep a team cohesiveness going? How do you keep people motivated when they don't see and socialize with each other all the time? How do you break barriers when you bring new people on board, or have big changes that require that you also have the human connection? These are things that I think businesses now have pay more attention to. And I think this is going to be the new reality going forward. Even when people overcome the COVID crisis, I think they now have an idea that work is possible in new ways. And we see the impact here, at least. But and I don't want to just rant on if that's not really part of the topic. But
Yeah, yeah. No, go
we,
ahead.
we see things. I just read this morning about rental prices in Manhattan, one of the densest populated areas in the US, dropping because people are moving out. They're like, why am I supposed to be here suffering through all the pain and the expense when I can live, let's say, out in the country without any of the stress and headaches? And people are moving out. They're realizing work and the work paradigm doesn't have to direct their private life. And so the other, where people were congregating in the cities, and depending on, that was where the opportunity was, right? So, if you're looking at the development historically, cities were the economic engine of many of a region, and that's why people would, stream towards them. The what qualifies as work, the definition of work and what you're doing allows you to go reverse now. You can go into a rural community and still be an effective quote unquote contributor to the organization you're participating in without suffering the physical density if you don't like it.
Right. And indeed, like that's been the trend here as well. I suppose most likely, most of the companies that like you said, perhaps are in a shock, like who are used to meeting clients in the office space, and I still feel like we miss out that human to human interaction, sitting close by and fighting with each other, right? So it's just brainstorming about new challenges and trying to prove a point, perhaps.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Frenemies and enemies that you keep need to keep track of.
Yeah, I miss those moments as well. But like I said, it's completely possible to just stay home and do your things and still make a difference. So this is where we are at. Um, let's maybe begin your own journey.
Okay.
Why an entrepreneur? Like
Oh
why
boy.
you? Yeah, and I want to go really deep.
Yeah, it's like you want to go way back,
Deep
way
and
back.
wide. So, so
Sure.
why entrepreneurship, right?
Oh boy. I've been an entrepreneur a long time, and I solidly belong into the group of unemployables, because I'm too frank for my own good, and
Yeah.
I understand that. I've actually worked with a lot of large enterprises throughout my journey. And I think it started early on when I had a stint in let's say, software research of a large company. And I hated every moment of it because we were producing such great stuff and convincing a hierarchy of whatever, 40,000 people company that what you're doing is innovative and cool is basically fighting against, like the snowstorm or something. It just wouldn't work. I said, I can never do this again. And so I went back to school, got a graduate degree, and I said, you know what, I need to do my own thing in tech. And my graduate degree was actually in international business, and my school advisor, the person that's supposed to help me find a job after graduation, his advice was like, you spend all this quality time, you getting this education, you should work for a big company. I said, that's exactly what I don't want to do. So I have this idea, working in technology, and at the time that wasn't really hot. Technology to people in business was data center operations. That was as technology as it got. Right? Yeah. So and I said, that's not really what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about creating things that makes people do things faster, operate better, basically surrounding themselves with things that make their lives better. Anyway, the advisor's words were, you're going to look for a job in 6 months. That's stupid. Don't do it. So me and my roommate at the time, we were like, no, we're going to do things on our own, even it's not technology related. So we really started creating our small business at the time as a purchasing aggregator for doctor's offices. We found I think a gap in the market and said the way this process works is inefficient. So we developed a solution for it. And so that's how we started our first business at the time. And, I don't want to necessarily go on the first one. Obviously, every iteration you learn. And I think 8 iterations later, I'm at XcooBee. But in between, I did probably wholesale, I did consulting, I did software products, I did financial services. And every time I basically started from scratch with nothing, but an idea that was worth about as much as money I had in my pocket and the coffee I could buy, and trying to make something out of it, because that's how I tick. I like to create. So this driven to create kind of motivation is what always makes me tick, or makes me get out of the bed. So what can I do today that's different, innovative, or it doesn't have, it just makes somebody's life easier. Somebody told me a problem yesterday. I said, how could I solve this? And that's just that mindset always going on. How can I productize it? How can I build services around it that could help the person or persons or businesses doing that? So that's how I was been doing it. And early on it was called small business. It was not called entrepreneurship. The idea that you would jump out of school to do this was completely crazy. Out of why would you spend money and time learning all this big business stuff to jump into small business? It was not understood. I think that if you compare environments in favor of entrepreneurship today versus, I think when I might date myself, going to college about 30 years ago. Right? Wow. So they are very different, vastly different. The understanding of that a small business can make a difference and can produce valuable products, can actually help the community, was not a given. People were doubting that. The only people that could produce solutions in their minds were big businesses with a lot of capital. That's the only way we could impact change. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I think we've also proven that other forms are possible. And that was my journey I guess put a little bow around it type of stuff. There's many years of stuff to cover, but I've been an entrepreneur one way or the other throughout my career, because that's what I love to do. I've worked with large businesses. I've created actually global financial networks that only large businesses used. I implemented products from some of them multiple years, because stuff that we've developed over time in the largest businesses in the world. But I did not want to be part of that organization, because that's not where I see myself succeeding long term. or even wanting to be. It's just, I think, it's a personal preference. I don't, I don't want to come across as I'm judging them to be bad or good. I think it really depends on the individual and where they are in their life, and as well as their preferences, where they are happy. And they're, very dear friends that are very happy working for large banks or large banks that I know personally. And, I am the other way.
True, true. And you mentioned like you work in a different iterations, and maybe there are different ideas that you work through, right?
Mhm.
I'm sure there were some great ideas, and maybe at the beginning you also thought each of those ideas were awesome.
Yes,
Uh,
we all have that. We all have that myopic look. It's like, this is the best idea since sliced bread in U.S. terms, and you go like, holy moly, this is really bad. Why did you do it? And that's one of the challenges of any given entrepreneur, I would say, and even technologist, is to see when to stop. Even if you marginally succeeding, maybe you're better off not continuing, and that evaluation is one of the hardest to make. And I have my difficulty with it. I've seen other people struggling with it. When do you say this was really a truly horrible idea, and you need to do something else with your time?
Mhm, mhm. So when do you want to say, okay, this is it? Like when do you draw a line?
I think there are several criteria you can apply to it. One of the obvious one is the financial one, right? So it's like, okay, I'm putting X number of money in it. I'm not getting that return. We got to stop, right? So this is basically the curve. You're running out of cash. The other one, I think, is to me, is the social impact or community impact curve. Is what you're doing make a difference? And make a difference in people's life, and how many people are impacted by it. So if I stop today, we're with 10,000 people having to figure out some other way of finding the next food item, or the next way of protecting their data, or there's impact in the way you go, like, make you hesitate a little bit. And I think also your personal opportunity cost comes into play.
Mhm,
If I'm working on this idea, but I have this other super idea that I can't work on because it's not possible at the same time, that I'm giving up. So I think it's very kind of like a triangle. You have to align that little dot to fit right into your decision matrix. And that's why it's so difficult. If it were easy, like, hey, and this is some of the, I guess, the lore out there, the legend that you turn stuff around in, let's say, 90 days, and boom, your startup is great, and you're the next unicorn, or you need to jump off.
yeah.
um, I've seen that with friends that I have that are in the Silicon Valley area, where you jump from one startup to another. Basically, you give it 3 months, you give it 4 months, and if they don't have sufficient traction in that period, they suck. And then and then we have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
leave. um, that's really not how it works. That's not my experience, and maybe I'm not experienced enough, who knows. But I know that many ideas require multiple iterations, multiple repositions, and it will take probably a lot more than 90 days. Or,
Mhm.
I think many of them, in order to come to a better decision, will require 18 to 24 months. I think that gives you a better handle on it. Some may even take longer. Some hardware concepts will require a lot of time and effort for you to make a decision. They may go into 36 months, may go into 5 years. So this is why I'm saying this is one of the hardest decisions you can come up with, or trying to quantify in a way where you can say, that's the point, I'm going to stop. It is not as clear. I think you may wake up one day and say, okay, that's it. Or you may set yourself your own goal. If nothing happens in this fashion, I'm going to stop doing this. So everyone has to make their own decisions with that. I hope that gives you as much clarity as I have some
No, no,
days.
no. Indeed, indeed. The thing is, what I found, fascinated with entrepreneurs is, one of the common trait I would say is being hard headed, right? So,
Yes.
this is a very common trait, and like you said, to say, okay, this is it. It's difficult for a lot of
Mhm.
entrepreneurs. And with your experience, you said, okay, it might take a certain amount of time. And for the people who are just starting, perhaps they don't know, they don't know when to stop, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
And
like if I could, look at what I can do and, work for somebody, let's say for a year, that's an opportunity cost you have to put into your calculations.
Mhm.
If I make X number salary in a year, that's 12 times X I wouldn't have, but I at the same time have to spend Y in order to keep this business afloat or running to a certain degree. So those both together build an opportunity cost element in your calculations, not
Mhm.
just the spend that you're doing against your startup.
Mhm. Right, right. And maybe then let's talk about the your own startup a little
Hmm.
bit, and then maybe try and to explain in terms of the value that
Okay.
you're offering, not in terms of what it does, but then the kind of value that it can offer to a person like me.
Sure, sure, sure. So I founded XcooBee, I would say about 3.5 years ago, kind of on the sideline because it was an idea, right? So
Yeah.
the idea is to look at how I, as an end user, can impact the dissemination of my data and the control of it once I'd given it to somebody else. And what we were seeing out there was insufficient, right? So basically, large corporations had all the control of all the data they ever asked of you, right? So if you had given it away, it was basically thrown across a big wall. You had no insight what happened afterwards,
Yeah.
and that led to a lot of surprise discoveries. I think as people moved along, if you're thinking of the data breaches that happened to Equifax, where people like, oh, they had my data, who knew? And the paradigm that we came up with at XcooBee, we call it a personal privacy platform, was for people to be able to engage with companies, actually direct the use of the data as well as control the use of the data over life. Basically, if the company wanted to use it for a different purpose, they could ask for it. There was negotiation going on on a continual basis, because what we found through our research is that privacy today for you is not what privacy is for you tomorrow. You might have a family that's growing, they have different needs versus somebody that's older versus somebody that's younger. I think the idea was that you should be able to renegotiate what the control of your data means, what people can do with it in any of these life stages. That was the idea. So we came up with that idea, said, okay, we can put this in, but where's the monetization? Well, the monetization for that was more longer term, as we were seeing more people being part of the platform. There are elements that could be clearly monetized, like you could negotiate a rate for the use of data. And obviously the companies could pay for it. And then later on, we actually built an insight engine where they didn't even have to get the data. They could just ask for insights. Basically, how would a certain population react to these messages? And we just give them the messages rather than having them collect the data in the first place. So basically it makes it safe and secure. Some of the legal changes there were also good for the European market. But what we found, and this is where the pivoting started and all that stuff, is we were targeting end customers, the people that have the least leverage. And what we also find is that people are, liking the ideas as concepts, but they can't or will not necessarily pay for them. So we are like, okay, people love it. We are technicians. We don't market very well, so we have to rely on word of mouth. But they are reluctant to go and share that with other people because they don't necessarily want to come in as and saying, hey, I'm protecting everything. And especially in the US, I'm squeamish about privacy. When we started, it wasn't a topic that resonated. I think it has changed quite a bit, even in the last 12 months. And when we look over the last 24 months, the attitudes changed quite drastically as well. But we also got COVID, which basically, for a lot of the stuff that we do that allows people to manage their data exchanges, manage breach interactions, manage, for example, on a personal level, if you had any trouble to report against agencies, so you didn't have to go search where these things were. You could actually use one centralized place to manage this. It was just not a burning thing in the US where we are mainly located. And in Europe, what we found is our messaging was convoluted because we were trying to say we're doing too many things, which we were doing. But I think the people that were more focused, and that's basically saying, I only do reporting against companies, which is one of the things we do. Or I only do reporting for to agencies about problems, which actually nobody quite does like we do still to this day. These things as a spot on or as a focused message resonated better than as a saying, I'm doing everything under the sun, which we, I think, as producteers, I would call us producteers rather than marketers, had a harder time expressing. So even though I believe that the value was clearly there, and is still there on the individual use case, if individual user signs up, it's just harder for us to express and push through the buzz of messages that flies around on the internet. And we can't afford to spend the marketing dollars to break through, if that makes sense. Because we tested certain marketing approaches and it just would take so much more than what we would potentially return on that investment, especially since most of the products are free. So, and don't have advertising. So you're like, okay, so I'm trying to give you something away in the hopes that I can make a product life cycle that can build on later. Was a hard sell, especially even for companies. We offer things for managing their ingress of data, I guess their interaction with their customers. When it comes to, let's say, hey, Pramod, I have your email address, may I use this for something else? Or when you said, hey, give me all the data you got, we had automated tools for companies to use free of charge. So we built a lot of stuff as a free ecosystem. We wanted to build on top of that, but what we found out is if we cannot continue in that fashion, because if we have nobody converting or not sufficient amount of people wanting to convert for paid services, it will drive us under. It just wouldn't work. So what do we do in a business when you see that the current approach doesn't work? You pivot. Right, so we built all these interesting tool sets for privacy protection, but even though our roadmap still has some super cool tools for us to still build, we also needed to build things that have a clearer commercial path. And the unfortunate thing is I've been in, and this is, I guess, the hard learning for me, I've been in, I've worked on concepts that were ahead of its time, or people say, hey, you may not have been a good marketer. Possibly so, and I give them that one. But I've worked, for example, on collaboration concepts that were working in a browser about 5 years before a company like Netscape picked it up. And actually, because basically the core ideas they put in some of the email and thread readers, we worked on research 5 years before them. But it basically, if the market isn't where you are, you can't shout into the wind. It just will not work. That lesson to me was very painful. So here we are kind of, I saw us repeating that. And so we actually looked at what we had built as a platform, and we've built a lot of things that dealt with very secure exchanges of information from point A to point B, and a workflow engine that was very dynamic. And I don't know whether you're familiar with a company called Zapier, for example. Zapier is a
Zapier,
T.
yeah.
Yes. They do like online integrations. Let's call it online integrations, because I think that's what you would think of that model implemented in a common coding platform. Basically, you can actually have code from multiple people come and work together in order to build a dynamic workflow. And that's kind of the platform we've built for privacy execution, so that we could create containers that worked independently and were supplied data to, and they could do any work that was assigned to them. To us, that meant we could actually do any work. Why were we restricting ourselves? And so we started looking out for, especially with COVID, where people didn't want to pay for the privacy models that we were offering, and most of it was already free. So we're like, okay, we're making exactly the same amount of revenue one way or the other. Let's look at models that would pay, would generate revenue. We looked to some of the experience I had personally, as well as doing some research into the Far East, like into China, Japan, Korea, in terms of payment systems. And what we found is that they actually bypassed the card payment stage of development. They went from straight cash to straight digital. And how did they achieve that? And what are the things that are working? What are the things that don't work? What are things that are difficult to do here? And we took those lessons and built payment systems that used, I guess, the learnings from the Far East with the convenience of needed for Europeans and Americans. And that is where I think the pivot happened. And we started that right when, like after the first few weeks of COVID, when we could not see our model continuing in the way it was we were initially planning. So you answered, you asked one question and I answered probably 10 different ones.
No. I think the most important bit is how I'm trying to just understand how as a user I'm going to monetize my own data, right?
Oh, so, yeah, you're looking up the we call the privacy monetization. It's actually very simple. We actually build facilities for both sites. It's not very simple. It actually requires a lot of work. You can say, hey, I'm Pramod. I live, let's say, in Belgium. Which city would you say? Antwerp. So Antwerp, and this is my profile. I'm a male. I'm between these ages, and the company would say, I have a need for persons of this profile, and one of them is basically European males living in Benelux, basically in that region. We want their data to for marketing purposes for 3 months, and we are willing to pay this. And you basically we actually created a marketplace where you can look for companies and their offerings, and the companies can on the reverse look at your offering. It's basically like an Amazon for data, if you will. And part of the aspects that we build are more like a Tinder for data, but where basically you say, this is the contract, this is the use of the data. I am this person. It may be location data. So you are allowed to track me between the hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. every day. Because I'm the profile you want, I have this education, this background, you want to track what people do in Antwerp. How am I going to get this? Right now, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to try to put some malicious app on your phone, or some way that's nefarious to get the data. With XcooBee is actually very straightforward exchange. I subscribe to your data for the next 3 months. You're going to get, let's say, €1 every month for it. And that's where the negotiation starts. The company makes an offer, you make a counter offer. If you meet yourself in the way that we have automated negotiation for both of you, boom, your contract is come into play and the data flows. And when the contract ends, the data stops. And then we have end of life cycle resolution, basically what happens afterwards. That's also contracted, but it's all automated.
And yeah, I mean, and for certain types of data, perhaps that might be the case. But what if I'm in a big platforms like Facebook and other big platforms where my data is already there, but then if there was a possibility to sort of work with your company to say, hey, I want to now start to monetize my data. Is that something that you are looking for as well?
That was one of the plans we were trying to build. Basically, we give, if once one of the contract elements is your social data. So you can actually allow people to subscribe to your Facebook data through you, rather than through Facebook, or through you rather than through Twitter. So we basically make the access happen, pipe the information as long as the contract is alive, And then when the contracts stop, obviously we also get the money for you. So there's basically, we got that was one of the revenue elements. We obviously participate in the money revenue stream at the time when the contracts comes into play, and as the contract is alive. But the idea is, all of a sudden, rather than just Facebook making money off you, you get to make money off you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I
So
mean, that's what I'm after. Like, because if I want to sell my data, willingly,
mhm.
then I should have a choice to do that, right? I should
Yes,
have a choice, and I should have a means to do that. At the moment, I don't see that means, right? Like Facebook,
yes.
yeah, and
The
this,
tools for consumers are horribly deficient.
yeah,
And we were trying to bridge that gap, but we're not finding the willingness of the consumers to participate in a sufficient numbers for us to make sense.
yeah,
The marketing efforts required to get and break into consumer attention span are incredible.
mhm,
So we have to survive, grow, and go back to privacy. Right now,
mhm,
our focus is more on the payment elements, and our sales are more for a business-to-business type arrangements. But we haven't given up, and the notion and the vision of the companies to be a fair arbiter between companies and individuals is still there, right? We founded it with that vision, said this is a gap. There is a power differential that's too big, and
mhm.
so we can't have proper negotiation. What if we kind of try to make it an even ground for a proper negotiation that will work both ways? Fair use versus fair pay, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
And, yeah, I mean, that's right. That if you look at it from that perspective, that's correct. And then, as you said, like at the moment, like you have a certain stream that you're looking at more on the
mhm.
payment model. And what do you think about um, the scalability at the moment? What kind of challenges that you can think of as far as being scaled at uh, into enterprises and so forth?
Okay, so the good news is the scalability concerns that I have are less technical,
Mhm.
because I have had the misfortune of building different global systems, because we were selling like or we are creating things to be sold to enterprises in different countries many
Why, I
times.
want to interrupt. Why do you say misfortune to create something?
Because if you understood the pain people had to go through to, for example,
Ah,
deploy something globally, that
yeah.
that didn't mean necessarily go into the cloud. That meant you had to actually figure out where the data center is going to be located, figure out how the power goes there, the people, the internet connections that are redundant, and then basically manage the operations in a network operations center,
Mhm.
and whether it's outsourced or combined. And a lot of headache. That means you are on the phone, and I used to get calls at 3 a.m. in the morning because
Yeah,
some customer had an outage completely
yeah.
opposite on the world, and they couldn't get hold of anybody, right? So we, size restrictions that we have, and the call tree came to me, right?
You're lucky
So
you.
yeah, lucky me. So that has completely changed. So
Yeah.
when we are 100% cloud centric, that means we will not run any of our own servers or services. It's all globally distributed with buttons, button clicks, which is
Mhm.
far more convenient than getting all the capital to put into equipment and then put into locations and offices around the world. So that's why I said that was a misfortune, because it was super painful. Um, this this in turn is super easy for the technology perspective, the actual distribution of services. We chose a completely serverless paradigm, which means nothing runs until a actual request is made by the customer.
Mhm.
The old paradigm that, and I don't know how technical your background is.
Mhm.
I hope technical enough to understand, to understand that people used to stand up servers, and certain software ran on this server and another software on this server, and they communicated. Um,
Mhm.
This is no longer the case in the application models that we built. We built highly decentralized models that have super small microservices that fire up like all across the board when they are needed, and they can scale in milliseconds. So that's why I'm saying that if going from 1 to 1 million is really milliseconds delay, rather than it used to be, oh God, I got to spin up more servers. That model still works. I got to spin up 20, 30, 40, 50 servers. There's minutes of delay in that even today. But if you talk in serverless models, they can respond very quickly. But the application models that follow, that we have to build on top on how to manage a process through all their interaction points, are far more complex. And they don't follow what you learned in school or that were so centric or based on a given location of compute. We don't know where this thing is going to fire off. It doesn't matter. Our servers don't have to have names because we don't have them. They are compute instances that are virtually created and destroyed as processes run. How do you track users through it? What are sessions? What are files? Even what is time are questions to be answered sufficiently in order for that to work as a coherent application. But once you work that out, it's pretty beautiful to watch. You go like, wow, look at that. and the way we did is fairly secure, actually incredibly secure. We can pipe transactions through our network that we have no insight about what they are. But we can still tell you it's successful. So that's where the privacy piping and the modeling and the computation models that we built around are, to me as a technologist, are super exciting. Because I can compute something for you, which I have no idea what's in there, but I can still make the computation happen and then give it back to you as a result.
Yeah. And coming back to the topic of the privacy, and if you look at your client base now, or I don't know which stage you're at as far as, the different types of clients it is more applicable to your service offering. Which particular sector do you think is going to leverage more at the moment as far as B2B clients are concerned?
When you say leverage, do you mean like using our platform, or you mean
using
like
your
something?
platform? Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We are seeing more interest in the retail side because I think they're looking for innovative solutions, and in the hospitality side as well. Those are the two sectors that I can say have more clear defined needs that match up with what we can offer. And so that business to business value proposition is easier to make. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because then you have a strong bulk of let's say user base, right? So you're targeting a retail. It means like all the users that are associated with that particular retailer is coming to you directly. Yeah.
Yes
More or
and
less.
no. Yes,
Yeah,
yes
no?
and no. Because
Okay.
the reason
Explain.
I say yes and no, because the way the model works is we are completely white labeled. You wouldn't know you're using us.
Okay.
So we don't get direct exposure as we wish. That's basically the next stage where we say, hey, why don't we get some elements of our brand to help you show people that you are caring about their privacy and so forth. But we are really looking at models that offer high convenience to retailers, where people, if you think about, this is the interesting part. Let's start with the retail problem. The retail as we know it today has been invented in the Industrial Revolution and follows the factory model. Right? So, everybody goes at the central place to go into the store. They're expected to walk a certain path and exit at a very central place. Right? That's the model that we've come use. You've been trained to use it. It's not like automatic. There's some training going on for customers to understand how to operate in that model. If you put somebody, let's say, from 500 years ago into a store today, what would they be able to do? Right? So it's just because that was before factories. So that model worked until it didn't, which I think COVID taught a lot of people that retail can also be a safety concern. And a lot of people have shifted their behavior quite heavily now to online buying. right? People trying to, but it doesn't mean all retail is equally impacted. From the research and from the information that we have, certain retail operations like groceries still okay. People have to go get food. And then we have
Well, it
things like,
depends.
yeah,
It
yeah,
depends.
they're fully cooked, right? It's a different story. But we have also the hardware stores where people like they're trying to fill time. They're trying to discover things to do around their home. They engage in projects. So those elements or those sectors of retail doing okay comparatively. Everybody else is struggling for a new business model. And the current response that we see is actually, we cannot imagine that to be working. And if you listen to the announcement of big retailers here, especially in the US, is they want to take a conservative approach. Conservative means basically they don't want to change much. They don't want to put too much inventory into their stores going forward for 2021 kind of season. So if you're a consumer, let's put ourselves in the, like, you understand that the store has even less inventory, and it's not going to have anything exciting. What is your incentive to go shopping there?
Yeah.
And if the incentive is for retailers to bring in people, we believe the experiences have to be different, right? Just where you have to blend the online behavior, where you discover stuff or when you can get help immediately, with the physical world in a way that makes sense to the consumer today. And so that's the shopping model we build for retailers, where people can walk in. They don't have to have a sign-up account, pre-registration, nothing. So if you want to participate, let's say in the shopping experience, you want to check out anywhere in the store, you don't have to go to the front. We can do that for you. We can make the experience branded, and we can give people help where they need it, right? So you are looking at a shelf, like, I'm looking at this chicken soup. What can I make with it? Right now, the experience becomes interesting. If I could press a button and get help from Pramod, who's an expert in chicken soup, I'm not saying that you are.
I might be.
Right? So Pramod, the chicken soup expert, and Pramod's like, yeah, that's the best chicken soup. Why don't you look at adding this and this ingredient to your basket while you're right at the store? I can see it's there. Let me give you directions where in the store it is. You pick it up. You just check out where you are. You walk out through an exit check where if you ever had a Costco experience, which is or a BJ's experience, which is in the US, I guess larger quantity sellers, where you basically go through an exit check. They check your receipt. Assume that we have an electronic version of that that's actually smarter. We will actually tell you what stuff to look at and which stuff to avoid, and how to get people through and exit your store without any interruptions, or with a lot faster pace, so you can turn more transactions with the same number of employees. The experience changes quite drastically. Now I want to go into the store and explore what I can match this clothes with something else. What other colors can I pick with this? Let me ask as I'm shopping. People like that social element. They hate the factory element. So let's give them something that they love and package it up so that they are interested coming back into the stores, because otherwise we have expensive real estate that is not returning the value. And that's what we build with the retail experience. And that's why people are talking to us. It's, and on top of that, they get all the privacy elements. Whoa, look at that. Because as data is being exchanged between the end customer and the retailer, there are elements for security, how data is moved. We can build in permission bases for follow-on sales and marketing that meet all the stringent privacy regulations that we are aware of in Europe and in the US, but also give customers insight into where their data is. So
and when you are creating this experience, of course, you are also making this experience based on some informations, right, that you have collected from the past, or you would have analyzed some form of data, so that you could relate that particular experience to someone who is at the store, or who is trying to buy something, right? So still you're making that assumption based on the previous data, or you're making that assumption on a real time. Like, what are the elements that you look for in order to create that experience?
We interviewed retailers,
Mm-hmm.
but we also follow retail analysts.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I'm getting a weekly download for here's the numbers, here's the expectations, here's what all these people have said about their operational decisions that are public and going into the future. So given that mix of stuff, it's not one source that gives us the information. In our system, we really don't track people in particular. We will tell you how many transactions you're running. Obviously, you know that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the data as that is required to be there in order for you to run the transaction is there, is the data that has to be there for the business. It's part of it. It's not the whole thing. But we are clearly seeing that people are looking for a different experience. We're clearly seeing that they're looking, I call it for the 3 S's, which is security, safety, and simplicity as part of the purchase. Because that has been ignored for too long, and that's what keeps people away.
Right, because I was thinking, there must be somewhere, you need to fetch data, right? So you're making the smart system. In order to make smart system, you need some kind of data to make it smart. Otherwise, it would just be a system, right? So
yes, I mean the data is available to
yeah.
as you're interacting, because that's part of the model, and
Yeah.
that's been disclosed up front. And when you walk into the store and you put something in your cart, that data is available to the retailer, right? Like
Yeah.
any online retailer has cart abandonment. Similar things, we have cart abandonment. People have put stuff in their virtual cart, but they didn't check out. What happened? They paid up front. Why? Right? So they may only do cash, right? So or they wanted to check out stuff or test it out, and that's what's that.
Yeah. Okay, and you said like you have people working for you from Ukraine and also from India.
Yes.
And of course, like you already had the experience there, but at the same time, it's a different time, I would say. It's not the regular time that we used to have in the past, of course. So how do you sell the idea to the people still, right? Or how do you motivate the people that are working for you? What are the recipe that you use in order to make that soup really spicy still? If you like spicy, by the way. So.
My travels through India tell me that I like spicy, but I can't handle Indian spice levels. How's that?
Yeah, the thing is, like, in the let's say in the European region as well, people are like, okay, I can take spice, and then they start to go to the Indian restaurant, or the first time ever are introduced to the Indian spice. Then they feel the real heat. So
Yes, yeah, no, I'm very honest. Whenever I was traveling, I've had many opportunities to be in India because of what we're even doing in the past is outsourcing. I have many Indian friends. When we used to go out, I tell them, please don't do it spicy, because that by itself was super spicy for me.
the starting point.
Yes, and even because there's the communication gap was like so profound. They're like, no, what he really didn't mean that. Why
Maybe
would
you would have said it,
anybody?
I like spicy, right? So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
at the
Like,
beginning you said like, can you take spice? Yeah, I can take spice. Maybe the conversation was like that, right? So.
no, maybe might have dropped it accidentally, but I understand that there's different perception of what that means, and I don't even know how we ended up over here. I think I was trying to answer a question, but please
Yeah,
remind me.
yeah, okay. I could remind you. So, like I said, right? You have operations in
Ah, yes.
in India and also in Ukraine, and like I said, it's a different situation now. And then,
Mhm.
what is that? What did you say to your people that keeps them motivated? Because it's a
It,
journey that is very complicated now with the COVID situation. And I'm sure as an entrepreneur, there are so many challenges that you have to deal on top of this one, by the way. And yeah, what do you do to motivate the people?
so the, it is challenging because they have different facets of COVID. being presented at them. India actually coming in late to the game where Europe was earlier. And where some of the shutdowns happening in Europe, we're basically trying to work with the contractors there that were kind of holed up. They felt like they're kind of holed up in their place forever. We give them a conversational outlet. We actually have a project manager, Scrum Master, that is very good at having one-on-one conversation, saying, what are you concerned about? What is the thing that we can do to help you? And how can we cheer you up? And we do go through that exercise to make them understand that even though we are remote, we still have a sense of connectivity, and we have a sense of purpose to build things and to do things together to make everybody's life better in the end. And we can see sometimes, and especially right now, is the Indian people that have had tremendous hardships because the lockdowns were so drastic, so unexpected, where they're trying to all of a sudden next day I couldn't go anywhere on the streets. They were basically harsh punishments to be there. We really had to make extra effort to keep the communication alive because we can't be there ourselves. We can't give them a hand. We just say, we can talk about it. Please, feel free to reach out to us and have that one-on-one communication. But also the way we have always been is we lay out the problem to the team that this is what we're trying to solve. How can we get around solving this? It's not just I'm going to push this idea to you and you don't know nothing. So everybody has brains. Everybody has intelligence. And I think this is an interesting thing about Indian culture now. Not the stereotype there is, and partially reinforced to my personal experience, is that you really don't speak up to authority, where you will say yes to anything and just to appease. And we had to overcome that to say you don't have to do that. You tell us if something's works. You tell us if they don't work. You will not be punished for given us an honest assessment. That's really not what we're after. We want to make the best product that we can as a team. And our approach has always been to keep the communication lines open, not just as a team, but also on a one-on-one, encourage people to communicate via our Slack channels across the world, say, what did you experience? What do you see? And sometimes, that's what we do. We start as, what do you see in your area? What is it that you see what is it that you see in India with this situation? And they're like, hey, my power is out. I don't know anything to do here. I'm on phone. We're dealing with these situations nearly every day where people, have basic infrastructure problems that we're trying to overcome. But we make efforts to have them understand that we are there to help them. It's not just we are expecting something and to be coming out of them one way. It's always a two-way approach from our part.
So what is challenging as an entrepreneur? Like, what is the most difficult thing that, come on, calm down.
Everything is difficult. Like you are breaking new ground. Like I used to say, like every time I look at somebody else's business, like that's easy.
From the outside, yeah, of course.
Like that's easy. But as soon as you get into it, you're like, oh my God, these are 10,000 things I have to do in order to keep the business alive and operating and working towards a common goal. The ongoing communication, the ongoing uncertainty as a small business, right? There's a lot of uncertainty we face as startups and entrepreneurs that we are maybe accustomed to, but most people that work here are not. That we just have to buffer them against some of it. But I think you also have to break through, especially when it comes today, about the masses of misinformation / information on the internet, to show people that you're there, that you can make a difference, that you have a value proposition. That is probably one of the harder parts to overcome today as an entrepreneur. You got to get that buzz. And that is, especially if you're like us, more builders and technologists, a very thing that we always struggle with. and hopefully we'll get better at it. That's all I can say. Better every day. But everything is something that we look at because many people wear many different hats. It's never a big company situation where we have 10,000 people and 5,000 do just marketing, or
It would be awesome, right?
right. So you have to do everything because everybody has to do everything. So that's the struggle of a small business, but that also is what makes small business highly adapting or
Mhm.
adaptable and fast in adapting. The very elements that make it, like so uncertain also make it very flexible.
Yeah, and nicely said. Because when I look at the small businesses, indeed, like it is challenging to do everything. Like even the smallest thing that you can think of, maybe with a large corporation, you will have a separate department to do,
Right.
even for the graphics. So you will have a separate department, head of graphics or head of content or
Right,
some.
exactly.
So in the smallest company, of course, like you have to do everything. Um, and when you look at your own workforce at the moment, right? If you
Mhm,
think about, of course, like you're already working a very diverse sort of, team, from Ukraine to India and perhaps from the US as well.
mhm.
So, what's sort of role a diversity in the office space or in the workspace plays in order to create a solution that you're creating?
I think diversity makes us look outside the box that we live in. And I always believe that. I think I'm more the exception in the way I've built businesses because I've always been open to that. All the entrepreneurs that I know, for example, in this region where I live, um, I would say about 2-3% are doing the things that I am doing in terms of being open to having a remote workforce that is not inside the same region. It's I think they don't see that necessarily. They always talk about diversity. There's always a lot of talk, but the actual managing of it, understanding the differences in cultures, understanding the differences in communication styles, and how you have to cross the bridges is not automatic. But the benefits are very clear to us because we can, when we had a payment solution issue, with like we want to solve it like this, and then the Ukrainian guys were like, no, that's BS. Like, and I'm
Yeah,
being nice
yeah,
about this one.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
we do it like this one in this way in the Ukraine, and and then I talked to a German guy. He's like, we're doing it like this here in Germany. So it's that that bringing together of many facets of the same idea to make things better that doesn't happen if I'd only talked to the people in the US. We would have solved it this way. We would have gone all to the left side and said, okay, we don't need to worry about this. Well, like when you talk to a European, like, no, we don't pay like that.
Different.
Right. So if I think you're making your life difficult long term because you're building things only for one facet of where we live in the global community. And I know there's a lot of people saying, hey, we should be all sticking to our own region and so forth. But I think in overall, businesses tend to be global, even small businesses. You compete with everybody, you might as well be able to sell to everybody. That's my thinking model.
Mhm. Especially at this time when I was talking to one of the entrepreneur yesterday, and he said to me very nicely that it's an even field now for everybody. It's an even playing field.
Right.
And before, obviously you had a physical presence at your store or your offices and so forth, and it made a difference. Or maybe you're from a certain region, right? So that made a slight difference in terms of how you approach your customers or how the customer sees you, right? Now everybody is online, so it's an equal playing field. So anyone can do the
Mhm.
job. So
You,
um,
you, you have great programmers in India and you have great programmers in Silicon Valley. Guess what?
yes,
They can't compete for the same job.
yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right. What's the dream? What's the dream? Like I think I would just like it was so quick with you, right? It
Oh
just
my God.
it's already 1 hour. I had too many questions, but that's okay. So what's the dream for you now going forward?
We want to create a business model that can carry us forward so we can actually make the privacy roadmap happen that we planned.
Hmm.
We had to stop and pivot because we, given away everything. And we still, to this day, do that. So if people want to sign up and, do privacy tools for their business or for their personal site, by all means. But at the same time, we needed to see a way for us to survive 2021. And so, like,
It's important. It's very
right, like,
important.
so we can get there. And I think we want to build a system that combines both. We want to be able to run transaction, whether it's payment or non-payment, safely through a system and make sure that both ends of the spectrum have full transparency. We want to give people tools to have better negotiation power and businesses tools to use data fairly and be able to conduct their business more rapidly and enable them to do better and faster things. We want to be around to make that happen. Really, there are things that I personally am interested in the child privacy area. I can't build because I can't find a market for it. So if I had sufficient sustaining revenue on one side, I can probably invest in the other even without it. It's not I think in the end, if you're just driven by profit alone, you're missing the opportunity on the social impact side. And I do wish that we can build that. And we actually, and I didn't even mention that our mission is inclusive. We really want to build tools and services to make a better interaction between customers and businesses. We have built or we've sponsored a project to create a children's book to educate children about online privacy before. And it is open out in the market and selling to schools for them to work with little children and educate them about what the dangers in online space are. And basically that was not a profit motive, and we did that,
Yeah.
right? So these are things that we hopefully can do more of. And we also have tools that are not free yet, but if we can build more on the commercial side in the payment space, they will become free. And that's, for example, a goal for our fundraising tools, where like nonprofits that require money have very I don't want to call them poor tools, but tools that are either overblown or not insufficient. So there's that middle space where the tooling is poor, where we have actually things that we want to make available. The question is, can I look at the business model and allow that to happen? So our dream is to make it a better place. It kind of seems
overstated,
too idealistic, like why?
Yeah.
But have enough impact that everybody that works in the team can see that their products matter. Their products matter because every day they could refer to a story where somebody's like, hey, look, I had this organization that raised money for hungry children, and I was able to help them. Or I had these consumers that all of a sudden lost so much financial information to this company, and they never had a way of expressing the the impact on them. Now they can. Or the retailer gets more people into their business and they survive, and that basically has a circle of impact and then cycles of impact for their employees, families, and so forth. We want to be a good business. Is that a bad motivation?
Well, that's a great motivation, right? So that's a dream you want to chase. I mean, of course, like you also want to make a revenue, and you mentioned like to just add one more question before I let you go. You mentioned about the child privacy, and then how to work with that, right? This is an interesting thing that you just brought up. I was thinking something like that in the past. Like, why don't we have something like that exists? Because there's so much going on in the internet, and as soon as you put things on the internet, like it's there, right?
Forever.
And yeah, it's there forever. Like
Yeah.
it's never gone, right? So So, are there any thoughts already on how to accomplish that,
Yeah,
in
we
your
have
mind?
we have actually an interesting product feature roadmap that would take us about, I would say, 12 to 18 months to build, and that involves many different elements, including how children interact with games on the internet and how parents are involved in it, and basically granting data access, removing data access, even as the children grow up in terms of becoming more responsible and adult, how the data migrates to them. And that in combination with school authorities, with government authorities for oversight. So we had a big vision on that area, but the funding has to follow, and it has
Yeah.
to be consistent over time. We believe everybody has to participate. I think parents just leaving stuff for the children on the desk, and it's just going to be an insufficient way for you to safeguard children's privacy. We believe the system has to involve solutions from the parents, with the children, with the schools, and it has to be completely transparent and manageable by everybody. And I can walk through, I have like multi-hour presentations just on the roadmap that we were going to build if we had sufficient funding / revenue to make it happen. We had to put it on the back
You had to
burner.
park that.
It's one of these ideas where like
Yeah.
it would be fantastic to do because it's needed. I still to this day don't see anything. I'm always disappointed to see how school software takes children's data, sells it to the highest bidder. I was like,
Yeah.
oh God, again, right? So these are things that we're trying to prevent,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we don't have the tools for it, and we can't build it because there's no money in it at the moment.
Yeah, and also the way childrens interact with the gaming softwares, or even watching certain videos. I'm sure there's a way where we can find a way to protect the privacy of a certain, maybe you already have figured out the roadmap, like you said.
We have elements. I don't know whether we have all the solutions for sure, but
Yeah.
we do have we call them authorized entities that can make certain things happen, but everybody's informed of when that happens. For example, a school can act on behalf of a child sometimes. Parents can act, of course, on behalf of their children, but the children can also act on their own behalf when they get old enough, right? You don't want to preclude them from the solution, because the idea is if once they get older, they want to access their data. What happens to that? Is it all getting erased? No, that control has to flow back to them. So we have different participants with different roles in an ecosystem that we believed had success chances. From the perspective of actually managing the data, the problem is the financial model, which we haven't quite figured out yet.
All right. Okay, Bilal,
Yes, sir.
thank you very much for this time. Did I pronounce your name well?
You did.
Bilal?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, that's
okay.
perfect.
Okay. I try my best to pronounce the way it should be. In the European region, people are quite sensitive about their names.
I've heard it in many different iterations and variations. So I'm as long as you look in my directions when you say it, I know it's me.
Well, yeah, okay. Thank you so much once again, and I really hope that your company would get a lot of success. I'm sure the challenges are there. I'm aware of the challenges, and that's evident. But nevertheless, I'm hopeful that in the 6 months to a year, like we will see each other on the other side of the COVID.
I hope so.
Hopefully,
I really do
yeah.
hope so. I think hopefully our goal is to emerge as a stronger entity when everything is over.